Uh, all right, welcome to Peeps Creek, the cafe where we serve you delightful, slightly intense, but definitely worthwhile conversations. A podcast focused on bringing people together by drinking, listening, and conversing. So grab your favorite drink and let's see what's on today's menu. All right, so welcome to Peeps Creek, the cafe, and this is a special episode because I am joined by none other than Miss Keena in the city. What up?
Well, hello. Hey,
Oh
how are
my
you?
god! Oh my god! Okay, so before we get into any conversation, I always tell the people what I'm drinking on, and so I'm going to go here first to you. What are you drinking on over there?
I am having my favorite, which is Cabernet Sauvignon.
Look at you, Cabernet. And so I am drinking on what I normally drink on, which is some good old bourbon. Look at that. Look at that ice. You see that ice? Ooh, look at
Yeah.
that. Filled up. Some good old bourbon with some lime, some lemon, and some sugar-free Red Bull. Okay. So the last time we saw each other in person was in
Mm-hmm.
the like graduation, which was in 1999. High school. How many years ago was
Yes.
that? Let me do some quick
20,
calculation. What?
almost 22. Almost 22.
Oh my God, almost 22 years. It's ridiculous. Like we see each other on Facebook and all the other social media. We communicate on each other's posts, but we have not literally seen each other in person in forever and really just had a conversation like vocally, right? This is this is crazy. So anyhow, so I asked Keena to come and have a conversation with me for this particular episode. This episode is episode 35. It is titled straight up No Chaser, but we are going to be discussing Judas and the Black Messiah, which is showing on HBO Max if you have it until March something, I think, and then I guess they're going to take it off or whatever. But Keena is basically an expert in blackness. She is an author. She is an educator. She is an all around phenomenal woman. So I'll let her introduce herself, tell you a little bit about herself and what she's doing. Go ahead, Keena.
Okay, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and talking about Chairman Fred. He definitely inspires a lot of the work that I do. But my name is Keena Day. I am an administrator in literacy education, and so I do a lot of work in school districts across the country to help improve literacy structures and things like that in curriculum and instruction as my day job. But I do a lot of community work in community education, and so I get the opportunity to organize community education in many different political organizations. So that's pretty much what I do. Have a great time as an author, having the opportunity to travel and speak and be in different spaces to talk to people about Black history. I am a Black womanist, an Africana womanist, and that's the ideology that I do my work on. So I'm very vested in the preservation of Black love and the protection of Black families. And so that's a lot of the work that I do.
Excellent. So tell the peoples the name of your books.
Yes. My first book is called The Colors of My Boudoir, which is actually a novel that follows a woman's journey as she, tries to find herself and figure out the best mate for her. And my second book is called Aphrodisiacs, which is a compilation of short pieces of poetry, memoir, essays that really talks about Black love in the now and the present, but also what white supremacy has done to our Black love ships and the different things that we can do to, um, restore our Black families.
Look at you now. Okay, so when this is okay. So this is me. I think I know quite a bit about Black history and being pro-Black, but this is
Hmm.
technically the first time I ever heard of the term Black womanist. So other
Hmm.
people may not understand that. We've heard of feminism. We've heard of that concept. So what is Black womanist?
Yes. So, feminism is rooted in white supremacy. And so, if you follow any of the pieces of the suffragist movement, Black women were not a part of those conversations, nor were they a part of the big feminist outbreak that took place in like the 1960s, 1970s, where, they wanted Black women to be on board to talk about women's rights. But when we talk about women's rights, that was specifically for white women. And so, in a lot of times, we as Black women were just, our needs and our issues were ignored. And so, Alice Walker, who, of course, you probably know, wrote Color Purple, started to get away from this idea of Black women needing to beg white women for a seat at the table in the feminist table. And so instead, she let people know that, until Black women are free, nobody will be able to be free. And so she began this ideology called womanism, and a lot of her books are steeped in it, including The Color Purple. And so I follow the more contemporary version of that was put out by Dr. Clenora Hudson Weems, where she put together an idea of Africana womanism that is rooted strictly in what we do to identify ourselves, identity work on understanding the history of, white supremacy in this country and oppression, also just renaming ourselves and reclaiming who we are through those identities, also just making sure that we have a hyper focus on building our communities through our families and making sure that, we're building wealth, that we are also working to build these blocks in our Black communities to really empower ourselves through the political process. And so that is what it's about. And it's just quite a bit of information that you can find about it, to go a little bit more. But it has 18 different pieces that women have to, kind of study and understand how we can put the pieces together to get to our liberation.
Okay, yeah. So that I didn't know that. So I'm glad I had you on here, or else I would not have known about that term and how to recognize it.
Wonderful.
And so feminism. I know we're supposed to be talking about Judas and Messiah and the Black Messiah, but I think all of this goes into it as well, right?
Yeah.
So when you say feminism is rooted in white supremacy, why do you
Hmm.
make that statement? Why?
Yeah. Just simply because it's the truth. Basically, white women wanted freedom from patriarchy, right? They wanted to ensure that they had reproductive rights, that they had equal pay, and all that other kind of stuff. But that was where it ended. It didn't go to the needs that we have as Black women. So, how we are neglected within the health spheres, and our reproductive health wasn't looked at as the same way or disenfranchised in the same way as white women, but they didn't fight for that equal rights for us. It just stopped at what their interests were. And so that is pretty much what the issue is with feminism. And you can read pieces on from Bell Hooks and other prominent, even Angela Davis, prominent Black women who, considered themselves Black feminists. But that is that's that's a movement steeped in the interest of white women and not all women.
and
So,
and so and just to put context to things, you're currently, let me make sure I got this right, in Denver, right?
Yes, I am in
Colorado.
Denver. Mhm.
And so I used to work. I used to live in New Mexico, but my supervisor, she was in Denver, so I would have to travel there a lot. Denver
Mhm.
is a great city, right? It's a lot to do, but it's it could be considered pretty white.
It is.
Uh, and so, in the sense of what you do, I think when you started, you indicated that part of this is creating your own tape, right?
Mhm.
And as a black womanist, am I saying it right? Womanist?
Yes, Africana Womanist is what I am. Yes.
Okay, Africano womanist.
Mhm.
How do you do that in the space that you currently reside in?
Yes. So I am actually a board member for the Colorado Black Women for Political Action, and I get the opportunity to design our community education efforts as well as youth engagement. And so basically, there are sects. I would say Denver is about 10% Black and continuing to grow. So, what's really exciting to me about it, especially since I've lived in very large Black cities prior to living here in Denver, that we can come together a little bit quicker. We have a black mayor. I don't even know if people know that, but Denver has had a black mayor for about 9 years now, and he's not even the first black mayor. He's the second black mayor. So there's lots of opportunities for us to be able to link arms and come together and really educate our communities and get out there. I know all of the people who are elected officials here in my area. I see them regularly. They have town halls on a regular basis. You know what I'm saying? We just make sure that we get information out. We make sure that our organizations are working together as much as we can so that we can get information to the people as much as we can. So, we're also very close to Aurora, which is a little bit more black than Denver, I would say. And other places like Colorado Springs, which has a pretty robust black community. But we just have to work hard to, link arms together so that we can progress. And we have a lot of black elected officials in Colorado, which is very exciting.
Right.
I don't know if you got a chance to see the most recent impeachment processes, but Joe Neguse is actually from Colorado, and we see him all the time, and he, is definitely deep and steeped into the work that we do as community activists. So, we do what we can, but there's been a lot of progress here, and that's been really exciting. And so we just try to unify as much as we can.
So, and this will be my last question,
Hmm.
um, related to you personally. Then we'll move to Chairman Fred. Um,
Yes.
so, how do you, as an educator, right? How did you find them to be? Did you find them to be receptive of what you were trying to instill or teach?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. But that's because I know my culture very well. I know the literature of my culture very well. I got the opportunity during my master's. I went to a HBCU, Tennessee State University, and during my master's, I got a
TSU.
chance. Yes. And during my master's, I got a chance to work at Fisk and work in their world renowned library, which was actually curated by one of Langston Hughes's good friends from the Harlem Renaissance, Arna Bontemps. And so he just had this wealth of like, forgotten texts that people just didn't even know about or not anthologized. And so I just really try to bring those types of texts to my students so that they could really see themselves within those texts and really, become active in how they respond to it. And so that's always been, when I was a teacher, something that really guided my work is that I wanted it to be relevant, I wanted it to be real, and I wanted them to be able to act on the things that we talked about in class. So,
Yeah, it's interesting that you say Langston Hughes because I'm in a process. I started a newsletter. I haven't sent it out yet, but this
mhm.
is going to be the first issue. And one of the things that I talk about is just some Black history facts, and the fact that there are a lot of school districts that are trying to actually take out um, African American studies, Black history out of the curriculum.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I put on there was that the first lawyer,
Mhm.
first Black lawyer, was actually in Ohio in like 1854, and it
Mhm.
happened to be Langston Hughes'
Yes.
great great uncle.
Yes, it was
Uh,
his uncle. Mhm.
yeah, Mercer
Mhm.
is I think it was his name.
Yes.
And it's just interesting. So that means that this conversation was meant to be because I had just finished that piece last night. Look how I work.
Yes. It's working out here,
We
honey.
were-
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about this movie. So, what do you think about the movie? We'll talk about the movie from a cinematic perspective, but then let's talk about some of the historical pieces because
Yeah, sounds great.
that's important, especially for what you do. So, what do you think about the movie?
Well, um, I actually went into the movie with bated breath. Although it was different than most of the other films that speak on African American trauma. It's usually directed by white people or written by white people or something where white people had something to say about it.
Yeah,
Whereas in this case, it was a black director, it was a black writer, it was a black producer. So I went in with a lot of hopes that this was going to really, really portray, at least that assassination part because it was such a um, climactic part of history in the BPP. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was done with respect, that it was done with grace, that our trauma, because it's a very traumatic story, I didn't want that trauma to be disrespected or done for entertainment. And so
yeah,
I went into it very nervous. And I don't know if you remember, but like in 2017, that movie Detroit came out. And I
yes.
remember being extremely excited about it. And it just was unnecessary trauma, and there was nothing that really could be gleaned from it except that black people were traumatized. And so I felt like this movie did a great job not presenting it in that way. I felt like it did a great job setting up Fred Hampton as a foil to who was actually the center character, the informant William O'Neill. I felt like they did a great job setting them up as foils, where they did tap a little bit into Hampton's background and less about William O'Neill, and you had to infer a little bit more about his motivations and stuff. And so I would have liked I liked a more round character. But
Hmm.
otherwise, I think the story was great. It was accurate. It was very accurate to history. I thought it was great showing because there's just a lot of video about Fred Hampton that existed in the months and the year right before his death. So you can see him saying all of these speeches and things like that they portray right here. Like none of that was made up. All of those terms and those phrases, that was real life. And so I felt like they did a great job portraying history and just treating one of our icons with a lot of respect.
Yeah, so I concur with that. I felt like initially when I saw it, I was like, "Oh my God, here we go again!" Right? That's
Right.
what I was because that's one of the reasons that I like that new Martin Luther King movie that came out with the release of the FBI records. Right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, I I didn't want to see another depiction of tearing down excellence, right, in the black
Yeah.
community. Like we all have our backgrounds. We all have shit that's in our closets, no matter how you want to think about it.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it humiliates the fact that we have black excellence um, based upon how they portray particular characters. And so I
Yes.
agree with you with this. And what I did not know until I listened, I don't know if you know this, there's a companion podcast to the movie.
Mhm.
And his son, Chairman Fred's son, is actually
Yeah.
there.
Junior.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Junior. What I didn't know was all of the negotiations that the director had to go through with the family because the family had for years, I want to say when I listened to this episode, it was like 20 years. They refused to let anything come out about Chairman Fred because they
Mhm.
just wanted to honor his um
Yeah, his mother was
his
very
record.
against that. Iberia was very against that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And his widow. I don't know if she got married again or not. The
Yeah,
well, they were
Deborah
never
Johnson.
married. They were never married, but
They were never married.
the
Yeah.
one who is Fred
Deborah
Jr.'s
Johnson.
yes, mother.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I liked it. And then what I didn't put together until watching this movie last night because I watched it last night so I could be prepared, right? I remember watching Eyes of the Prize, and I remember the interview with Bill O'Neill, but I
Yeah.
never really put them together about his his role in the killing of this 21-year-old man
Because
who
he
was
downplayed it.
yes, yeah. So anyhow, so let's talk about a little bit about some of the historical aspects. Now, when you
Hmm.
indicated your opinions about the movie, you said you thought it was historically accurate.
Hmm.
So where do you want to go?
I want to start off by saying, especially with what you just mentioned about Bill O'Neill and him downplaying it in Eyes of the Prize, and obviously it being something that haunted him so bad that he immediately committed suicide,
As
like
soon as it's the
as
same
soon as
day.
it the same day it aired. So you know
Yes.
that he knew that that was some bullshit. But at the end of the day, I want to just raise up this idea of where we were in 1969 that caused all of this, you know. And I talk about this a lot when people ask me about like the story of Fred Hampton and what actually happened. And what most people don't really know is that J. Edgar Hoover's very first civil rights leader that he took out through the same exact tactics, informants, you know, people around this person getting really close to him and feeding all this information and giving something very minute to put him in jail or whatever. The very first person he did that to was Marcus Garvey. His very first man he took out was Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey was his first black messiah.
Mm-hmm.
And so he put all of those systems and stuff in place that took out Fred Hampton 60 years before, I'm saying that wrong, 40 years before his death. He did the same thing to Marcus Garvey, the same exact thing.
Where
And
was he then? He was not the director then, right?
he had just become the FBI's director,
That's right, because
and he
he's one
was
of the longest
tasked.
serving directors,
Yes,
right?
yes. And he was tasked with taking Marcus Garvey out first for the same exact reason. And they found this small little, because you know, Marcus Garvey was putting stocks and stuff together. He had
Right,
all these co ops where people were sewing in money into like their needs in the community. Like this man had a whole enterprise going on.
right.
And people don't even realize like some of the symbols and stuff that we you know really try to support and push up now, such as the red, black, and green flag, and all these other things. That was from Marcus Garvey.
Marcus Garvey, yeah,
And so
yeah,
they took these informants, they gave small information on his stocks, they found one little small mistake that was made, and they tried to give him like a huge sentence for this. And so the same exact thing happened to Fred Hampton. And so I just want people to know, like, I really believe that we need to make a movement to really denounce J. Edgar Hoover, because he took and was responsible for the deaths of just very innocent black men who wanted freedom. And so I just wanted to raise that up before we actually start talking about why Fred Hampton became that focal point.
yeah. So, I think that's important because I mean, on I take notes when I look at these things, and one thing I would say is I've always despised J. Edgar Hoover. I
Hmm.
never, every time I go near the building in D.C., I
Hmm.
curse the building because he should not have a name, a
Should
building
not.
named after him. But that goes to show that there are, I mean, from a historical perspective, there are a lot of white folks who got names on buildings who shouldn't have names on buildings. There are a lot of white folks who have statues that shouldn't have statues. And people
Yes.
tend to overlook the history, the horrid history that those people brought for a
Hmm.
group of individuals, right?
Yes.
And because we are seeing when we are educated, right? The fact that you
Hmm.
are knowledgeable, the fact that you are able to articulate and speak facts and speak power to name and speak power to facts is something that intimidates a lot of individuals because they
Hmm.
don't want to see us prosper, right? They don't want to see us progress because when the movie opened up, he basically said that Chairman Fred was the single most greatest threat to the national
Yes.
security, more than Russia
Yes.
and more than China. And I'm like,
Yes.
how do you get there, right? He also said the same thing about Martin Luther King at one point.
Yes. Yep.
So how do you get there except for the fact that the the thread that holds all of this together, I think, is two things: educated black men and black men who are able to move people other than black folks, right?
Hmm.
Because when you
Hmm.
get other
Facts.
people on your group that are non-black, right, it
Hmm.
is oh, that is a problem. They're stirring
Yeah,
up something, right?
yeah, and they're
It
communists. Hmm.
yes, it is. It was so frustrating to hear that, and to see it portrayed. And I forgot who what's his name? Was that Martin Sheen who played him in the movie?
Yes, that was Martin Sheen. It was.
Because I started because he's on this is a side note, but he's on Frankie and Grace or Grace and Frankie. And I liked him in that show. And now when I see him here, I'm like, it's just amazing how characters can play a nasty role and then you just start disliking them. Right.
Right?
Because that was I had a
Absolutely.
grudge, just a side note, I had a grudge against Will Smith for years, right? Every
Hmm.
movie he ever came out with, I would never support it because I was so pissed with the change between black Viv and light skinned Viv. And I wasn't involved in it. I wasn't there. But ever since then, I was so pissed off
I
that
got
I
my
would.
Auntie Viv twist today, in fact.
Yes. Okay, sorry. Uh, but then I thought, when the movie opened up, I liked the fact that they showed Chairman Fred,
Yes.
and he was speaking to the fact of that the folks were those are not riots, but those are rebellions. People are
Hmm.
rebelling because of conditions, not because
Hmm.
of people. A rebellion
Yes.
is created out of the condition, right?
Yes.
So, what are you putting that in? I want to kind of jump for today. Remember what happened on
Yes.
January 6th, at
Yes.
the Capitol, right?
Yes.
Was that a rebellion? Was that a riot or
Oh man.
insurrection?
How
What do
much
you?
time you got? That was absolutely an insurrection. It was not a rebellion. And here's why. I don't know how much your listeners have gotten to the Equal Justice Institute, where they, now show all of the lynchings that happened in America. But at the Equal Justice Institute, they talk a lot about, and also, let me say, Henry Louis Gates shined a light on this in his documentary, The African Americans Many Rivers to Cross,
Hmm.
where white backlash is always the response to progress.
Hmm.
And so anytime that their liberties and their, white supremacist structures are threatened, that is generally the response. And you can see that starting in around 1868, when black men were given the right to vote
Hmm.
before white women. Um, you had white suffragists like Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony saying some very deplorable things to Frederick Douglass at the time
Right,
because
right.
they
I
didn't
remember
think
that.
he should have
Right.
had the right to
Not
vote
that I was
before
there,
them.
but
Right?
I thought I
But
was
they
there.
didn't think
Whatever.
he should have had the vote as a former slave before
Right.
them as middle class white women. That was their backlash. Then when men started to go for office, like 2,000 black men were elected. That's when we first got our black US
For,
representatives, our first black governor, our
exactly.
first black senator. And
Yes.
what did they do? They tried to lynch, they tried to kill, they did the massacres, and then they went to the Capitol and made Rutherford B. Hayes start repealing some things back to not protect black people and doing this progress. That is the truth of our country. And so what happened on January the 6th was exactly what has happened throughout history, that anytime that there is progress for people of color, there is, or any other, disenfranchised group, there is white backlash.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah. And what's striking to this is that um the place where they went to I guess to take over, um in reality was built by black hands.
Mm.
And so it's yes, over the years they did more things to it, but the foundation of the U.S. Capitol, the foundation of what was called then the President's House, was
Mm-hmm.
was created by black folks, right? Mainly
Mm-hmm.
enslaved folks, because when they tried to go and hire people to do it from Europe, they were like, "Yeah, nah, bro, we, yeah,
Yep.
we ain't coming there." And so the next best thing was to use free labor or labor that you
Yes.
can get at cheap, and that was the
Free
black folks.
labor.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so it has always been foundationally the aspect, at least from my perspective, that black people are always less than. This is not yours. And the moment that we come to rise up to recognize that we have just as much as authority, just as
Mhm.
much power, there's always an opportunity or an attempt to break those individuals down.
Absolutely.
And
And that's the story of Fred Hampton.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, and I did an episode on 13th. It was Christian, Denise, and I, and part
Mhm.
of 13th they showed the Fred Hampton
Mhm.
massacre, right, or
Mhm.
assassination.
Assassination, yeah.
There's no other words that you really can use, right? Um, and to see that little piece in 13th, right, but now to see it in a full movie, it really put things into perspective about how anything that we do that is seen positive is always spun as a negative. It's spun as
Yeah.
hate. Think about the Black Lives Movement, right?
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter. Some people like it. Some black folks don't like it, right?
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, it is seen or they turn it around as if it's hate, and it's not.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the foundation of what those groups were founded for, right?
Absolutely not. But that's
Um,
what white supremacy will have you believe because there is a fight against progress.
yeah,
And that's basically that's
yeah,
it, you know?
yeah, and I don't know if people just don't want to recognize it, just don't get it,
Mhm.
or they really believe that the times have changed. But the remnants of everything that happened to us as a group of individuals, African
Mhm.
Americans, blacks,
Mhm.
um, Africans, however you want to, what term best fits you, Negro, people of color. um,
Mhm.
it's just it's it has improved, but it has improved at such small increments that the progress that we currently have doesn't necessarily seem like progress. If does that make sense? What I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
But anyhow, okay,
I mean, no, I agree with you because just like we said, in 1933, when Dr. Carter G. Woodson wrote The Miseducation of the Negro, I guarantee you half of the things that he advocated for, we still do not have. If
right,
you go back and look at Marcus Garvey's Declaration of the Negro Peoples of the World that was written in 1920, most of what he mentioned in there we still are asking for a
right.
lot of those demands
In
we're still
2021,
asking for
yeah,
in 2021, 101 years later. So
yeah,
yes, there has been no progress, and that's why someone like Fred Hampton was a threat because he knew that if he united, that he brought people to understand that this was beyond race. This is about keeping capitalism intact.
right,
So they're going to make us feel like we're enemies for these very trite reasons such as race, such as class or whatever,
right,
such as gender.
right,
They're going to do these things to keep us separate, but if we can unite and understand that we have a common need and a common need for progress, then we combat this capitalism. We can't combat this white supremacy. That's why he was ultimately a threat.
So let's uh, let's let's talk about the title itself. Okay.
Yes,
So Judas, I think stems, at least my memory serves me correctly, stems from a biblical standpoint with the guy
that's
who
right.
who basically betrayed Jesus, right?
Yes, yes.
And the Black Messiah. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Why do you think that title was chosen? A, and
Mm-hmm.
why and B, do you think Fred excuse me, Chairman Fred was the Black Messiah, or do you think that the title itself kind of denigrates us or make us a monolithic community?
Hmm. So why it was chosen was yes, it was biblical, of course, and it was also chosen because that is a direct quote from what J. Edgar Hoover said. He particularly put, his agents out to make sure that they dismantled Fred Hampton and called him directly the Black Messiah. However, I also think that it was chosen because of this idea of a foil. You know what I mean? Fred Hampton was the exact opposite as a youth because actually Bill O'Neill was a year younger, I think, or a couple months younger than Fred Hampton was.
Right,
They kind of juxtaposed those two guys and their differences. Where Fred Hampton is, like dedicated to the community, and he is dedicated to this community because as a young child, Emmett Till was killed. His mother, that is very true, it's a true story. His mother, Iberia, was an early babysitter of Emmett Till. And so it's written, and I have this book here, The Assassination of Fred Hampton, that was written by his lawyer, Jeffrey Haas, but um they talk about it in Chicago all the time about how that deeply impacted him, where
Mm-hmm.
he saw, Emmett Till's mother have to bring his, mutilated body at 14 years old back to Chicago and literally have to, in that pain, show everybody her child's face because of what white supremacy had done to her child. And he felt that very deeply because his mother took it very personally. And he was thinking as a young black child, literally, like, is this what this country will do to me because I am black? And so he became convicted with saying, I am for the people. I will do everything. I am willing to give my life
Right.
to be able to make sure that my children and the people that I love and the women that I protect do not ever have to, live their lives in this way. That was a direct foil to him sacrificing himself for the people against this man who is just jealous and was manipulated to do wrong against this person. It's an exact allusion to what happened in that biblical story with Judas and Jesus. And so I think that it was apropos, just simply because you had someone who had been termed a Black Messiah, even though he did not term himself that. And he was willing to give his life for the people. And so they had those motifs all throughout the movie, but that was actually really true. That was true. He really, all things aside, he believed in the power of the people. He believed that the people were the ones who, if we struggled, if we loved each other, we will get to where we need to get to. And if
Yeah.
that doesn't sound like the principles of what Jesus believed in the and what he stood for in the Bible, I don't know what is. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much what that was why I was chosen. Now for your second question,
Uh
do I
huh.
think that that was a good representation? I do believe that it was. I mean, just simply because of, circumstance. But I don't think that it makes us monolithic because he is just quintessential. He is a leader that we hadn't seen before him, and so far we have not seen after him. And so I do think that, that's apropos for that reason.
So, do I want to stay on that for a moment?
Hmm.
Do black people, black folk, Afro folks, Afrocentric folks, do we need a savior? Do we need someone? I mean, because here's why I'm posing this question, right? I'm just because we had Malcolm X, right? We had Medgar Evers, we had Martin Luther King, we had Chairman Fred. For
Hmm.
some, it was Huey P. Newton. For others, it's Bobby Seale, right? So
Hmm.
we have these groups, and I know I'm missing people, but we've
Hmm.
had these figures who are seen as prominent for black people, right? And if you want to go current, what's the man with the gray hair that worked for James Brown, that worked with Al Sharpton, right? You had it back home in Detroit. You had what's the man who ran for president? Push Rainbow Push,
Oh, Jesse Jackson.
Jackson, right? Because I remember walking on Woodward, and he had his little building over there that they shut down because they started stealing money. Putting that aside, okay. All right. So,
Woo!
so I say all this to say, do we need a figure?
Here's my attitude about it. Fred Hampton was not the first black messiah. Like I said, the first black messiah to J. Edgar Hoover was Marcus Garvey.
Right.
But that was before he was killing folks. Okay. He
Right.
got
Right.
to the
Right.
point where he put that COINTELPRO together and started killing folks. But none of those men chose those roles. They wanted freedom for their families. And if people put those, labels on them that they became these leaders or whatever, I'm 100% sure none of them really signed up for the heinous ways that they were taken out and their lives were ended. And if you look at someone like, say, Nipsey Hussle,
Mm-hmm.
who is a contemporary, who definitely came from a different space. But at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? Like, was for the community, was doing amazing things in his
Yeah.
community, trying to teach people economic, you know, empowerment and liberation, and just to be gunned down, like slaughtered in front of his business
Yeah.
like it was nothing. I don't think anybody would want to sign up to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why would
No.
you want to be that person to sign up so that somebody can, put people that you think you can trust around you
Yeah.
that you absolutely can't, and they know all of your intimate details, but they are being paid by the FBI? Would you want to sign up for that? Because I know I absolutely would not.
Yeah.
And
No.
at the end of the day, I just don't think that those are labels that they chose for themselves. It's just that they were those voices. They were convicted. They believed that this is what their purpose and was for their lives. And whether it was true or not, they were willing to put their lives on the line for the people. And so I just think that that is what we have to take away from it, other than saying, do we need somebody now? Now, the biggest issue that we see here in 2021 for Black people, especially after we went out and delivered this election to the Democratic Party, is that now we're not organized. And so what happens when you don't have a leader is that you become unorganized. And so we just have to be very careful about that, because we have so many powerful women now who organized all of 2020 to mobilize and get people on the ground to turn out the vote. And now their lives have been threatened, all these other
Yeah.
kinds of things. So we just have to be careful making martyrs out of our leaders and do more to make sure that we protect them, because it's
Right.
just no reason that we continue to lose our leaders in this way.
And to your point earlier, I think this is a good segue to not that we're going to stop talking about the movie, but I do
Hmm.
think this is a good connection to one of the things that you said earlier about what you were one of the things that you were doing was creating a table, right?
Hmm.
And so I think this is my opinion. Folks may disagree. You might disagree, but there cannot be just one leader. I feel like there are
Too much vulnerability.
yes, too much vulnerability, and there's room at the table, right? When you create the table, at least one of the things that I've learned from looking at history, even history before me, is that folks were creating tables, but creating it so that others can sit at it, right? So
Hmm.
the more people you get that look like you at the table, the more likely you are to make and affect change, right? And so I just feel like sometimes people get stuck, at least currently, a lot of people get stuck on their egos about, I did this, that, and the third, versus this table is, yes, my seat is right here, but if you want to pull up next to me, pull your damn chair up next to me, right? And let's
Hmm.
get to work. Let's put our minds together, our work ethics together, so that we can affect change. I just think
But I
sometimes
think
we
that
we
that's
lose
what
sight of that. Sorry, go
But
ahead.
I think that that's what we have to illuminate about Fred Hampton. That's exactly what he
What he was
wanted to do.
doing?
That's
Yes.
exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to make sure everybody came to the table and understood that we had to unite together. And he just put his life on the line to be able to get it done. I think that, some of the things that they've definitely mentioned about him that is very true is that, yes, he ended up having to stop driving because the police harassed him. And he
Hmm.
definitely sacrificed driving
Yeah.
just so he can be left alone. He
Yeah.
absolutely had community education classes. He went to community college and was a criminal justice major at the time. And so he literally stopped going to school when he couldn't get there, when he couldn't drive anymore, and started educating the people. And what I see in the work that I do is just that people just literally do not know. Keep in mind, like I mentioned before, many schools have these Eurocentric, curriculums and philosophies and all these things where this type of truth is taken and kept away from us. And unless we do the work on our own to understand, we don't know. And so that's why he tried to educate people out of that ignorance and out of that not knowing, so that they can understand why you have to act now,
Yeah.
why you have to get to a point that you're fighting for your own freedom.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, like, these are the things he wanted to put a credit union together in Chicago. He wanted to have, black health clinics that people can go to help with sickle cell and all these other different things. He put co-ops together to be able to feed, hungry children. And all of that was adequately shown in the movie, and I was very happy about that.
Yeah.
But that's what he believed in. He believed in the history of co-ops and understood that that's how we got through segregation. Like, we have to mobilize and work in unity to be able to get to the next level.
Yeah.
So that's what's so important about making sure we're all sitting at the table and having each other's backs.
Yeah. No, and now that you say that, I think I would be remiss if I didn't say this. I remember, I don't know, maybe I was the ninth grade, eighth or ninth grade, and I happened to get a copy of Seize the Time by Bobby Seale.
Mhm.
And that was my first true introduction into the powerful movement, the powerful group known as the Black Panther, which Chairman Fred was the president, I guess the chairman of, they didn't use the term president, of the
Right.
Illinois chapter of
Yes.
Black Panthers. But
Mhm.
part of that
At
whole,
20 years old.
yeah, 20 years old, exactly, right?
Mhm.
And lost his life at 21, right?
Mhm. Yes.
Because of what you just said, his ability to bring people to the table, not just his friends, not just his family, folks who would potentially be considered his enemies, people who he could have and at times should have disliked and hated, right?
Mhm.
But he understood what a movement meant.
Yes.
And I think one of the most powerful things about being able to be a good leader is to bring into the fold those people who you normally wouldn't fuck with, okay? For lack of
Facts.
a better word, right?
Facts. I mean,
but
facts.
but the Black Panthers understood fundamentally when it comes to communities, particularly in impoverished communities, folks get into crime a lot of times because they need to eat,
Yes.
right?
Right.
If your stomach is ailing because you haven't eaten in days,
Yeah.
you need to survive. It's the natural instinct to survive. And if you're
Yes.
placed in an environment where the ability to survive isn't there where you can go get it legitimately, you naturally
Mhm.
would engage in other activity. And the Black
Yes.
Panthers understood that. They created these programs so their kids can eat, right?
Yes.
And folks like J. Edgar Hoover, as you saw in the movie, made that seem like that was an indoctrination too. No, bruh, they need to fucking eat. Like, if
Yeah.
we can't take care of our kids, who
But if you
else
couldn't
will?
get white men during slavery to understand the problem with slavery, then how do you expect their descendants, such as
Yeah,
J. Edgar Hoover, to understand that? And
yeah.
that's how I see that.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that goes to the whole point of folks who say, "Well, that was so long ago. My what is it? The sins of my forefathers should not be the weight that I bear, or something like that." But
Mhm.
if you don't break that down, I think I wrote something on Facebook or
Period.
Instagram the other day. When you don't break down systems that are faulty and you just patch them up, you don't correct it, right?
You don't.
And I think part of that problem is that you people don't break those barriers down and recognize in themselves the issues that make them tick, the issues that make them discriminatory, what have you, whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to just cover it up and say, well, that wasn't me. I didn't do it personally.
Exactly.
But yeah,
And I don't want to say pivot, but I think that this does speak to what you're meaning. Um we talked about womanism versus feminism when we first started this conversation.
yeah,
And I think that one of the major things that really draws me to Fred Hampton, especially in my, studies of him over the past decade or so, is that what was actually depicted in that movie of very strong female characters there was very, very true.
hmm,
Like I told you, his mother meant a whole lot to him, and
right,
he held her in his very high esteem. When William O'Neill drugged him, that's who he was on the phone with when he fell asleep mid sentence, was with his mother. And so what he did, that was something that I would say speaks to what you mean about people dismantling faulty systems, was how men treated women within the BPP.
yeah,
It was definitely known that they had very strong female, presence in the BPP throughout, but it's still, you had a lot of men who believed in patriarchy at the time, who looked at women as objects and things like that. And Fred Hampton did not stand for it ever.
Yeah.
And there was times when you would have visiting BPP chapters to come into the Illinois chapter and thinking, yeah, y'all gonna set up something for us to get with the women or whatever, and he would shut it down every single time.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a mistake or a lie in that movie. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? When he
Yeah. Yeah.
said it to Bill O'Neill, he did that to everybody in the BPP, sisters in arms.
Yeah.
And that actually was very, very, contemporary, because at the time, patriarchy is what led everything that we did.
Yeah.
But he made sure that you need to understand that black women are our partners in this struggle.
Yeah.
And that's something that I write a lot about in my books, which is the history of how black women were, especially in Martin Luther King's, his system was very patriarchal. And so women took a back seat to the men who were leading the roles. He wanted them, Fred Hampton wanted women right next to him leading the way, and that was definitely before his time. And so I think that that's something that really speaks to what you're saying, is that when we dismantle these pieces of the remnants of how America has always been, we have to be strong enough and bold enough to say, it stops with me. I
Yeah.
am not going to continue that practice.
The general, you come on, Iana Van Zant, not on
Because you
my
know I watch her every Saturday,
I
baby. You already know.
love her. You know, it is her last season, but I'm not gonna
I'm
cry.
so
Okay.
sad about it
I
too, but I love that lady.
know, I know. Okay. Wait. So there was something that I wanted. It was. It's not. I just think it's something that I really want to say. But when I heard it in the movie, it resonated with me so much. When Chairman Fred said the people's beat. You can never stop the. You can't. What he said something like you can't never stop the party. Like they can't
Hmm.
stop the people, right?
You can you can try to kill a revolutionary, but you cannot kill the revolution. Yes.
Yeah, and it's like that.
But can I make a comment about that?
Yeah.
You was about to get into it though, and I don't want to stop you
No,
mid
no,
sentence because
make
you
it.
got that hand up, baby. You was
I
getting ready
know.
to go to town.
No, no, go.
I just want to say that I don't know how much footage that you've watched or anybody has watched of Fred Hampton, but that piece of how Deborah Johnson really affected his life is so, it's just so profound to me, and we don't talk about it enough. And in my book, Aphrodisiacs, I did try to illuminate it, and I still don't think that I did as much justice as this movie did. Because listen, she was a poet. And she would hear him say these rousing things. But if you notice in the movie, that was like him in his 20s. He's young. So
Right.
he's brash. He's,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's
He's just
doing all
going
of
at
these
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
things where he's just going at it. He's been studying Malcolm X. He's been studying these like cadences by Malcolm X, where Malcolm X is doing more of this. And she's like, look, you can like kind of get more people if you soften your image and bring that to a poetic space, because you are a poet.
Yeah, I remember. I
And
saw. I
she
saw that.
trained him and changed his delivery, where he really, while he was in jail, and
Eh,
that all was
You
true,
try to say
he
women
went
as
and he studied it.
women is what's necessary. That's what I hear. No,
I'm
I'm just
not
playing.
saying that women are necessary, but I'm just saying that when a woman can, or a love, not even just a woman, a person's love that really believes in who they are but can push who they are, I just really think that that has to be illuminated,
Yeah,
because at the end of the day, he changed his whole way of delivery from those months leading up to his death based on her pushing him and saying, hey, you can't be this condemnatory towards people. You
yeah,
have to, present it in a different way. And that's when you got that line, you can kill a revolutionary, but you cannot kill the revolution.
yeah,
That's where you get that from. It's because now he's trying to do these African beats. Now he's spoken word. Now he is understanding
yeah,
that the power to people means gleaning from the energy of the people.
yeah,
And she taught him how to do that, and she, really illuminated that for him.
yeah,
And so I just think that we have to also understand that us in our love ships as black people, we have to understand where we get our power from.
yeah,
Our power is from the love that we have for another black person.
yeah,
And so at the end of the day, like, I think that that has to be illuminated as well. And I think that that's something that's taking a little bit of a back seat in the discussion of this movie.
yeah.
But
No, I wholeheartedly agree. And I think the quote that I was talking about was after she softened him, because remember the part
Yes.
where the music was going,
Yes.
um, and
That
so
was a real thing. That really
yes.
happened.
And the thing that when I saw this movie, I was just going to say this. It really resonated with me that um, you can't stop the party of the people, and
Mhm.
something of the nature. I forgot the quote. Hold on, I wrote it down because I
Mhm.
this reminded me you can't never stop the party like they can't stop the people. And
Mhm.
so if you take it out just outside of this historical context, right? When we
Mhm.
used to go partying, the party don't stop because of people. And I forgot the
Yes.
whole thing, right? But I I never fully connected how rhythm, how music and blackness is important, and how there's always a sense of happiness, there's always a sense of pride in the
Mhm.
concept of music. Because even like I was going to say, when I was in high school, and I Miss Allen didn't like that I left, but I left for a week, 2 weeks to go to Africa. uh, Miss Allen's marching
Child.
band. When we were in this high school at Cass Tech, and they thought we was a college marching band. Putting that aside, okay. But when I went to Africa, I understood instantly how much music matters. The conditions, we can be in whatever conditions we are, right? But there was a internal beat in these individuals there. You look around where they were impoverished, they didn't have a lot, but they had that twink in their eye and that pride in everything they
Mhm.
did when they did their movement. And go back to Ayana Van Zant. Now I understand when she moves a certain way, when she's talking to them, like the waves matter. And I just thought that that was powerful. But to your point, but for the young lady in his life at that moment,
Mhm.
right? He probably would have never got there. Um,
Absolutely not.
and so yeah. Anyway, I just thought that was powerful.
But inspirations are real. But
Yeah.
look at how white supremacy kills those inspirations. Look at what happened to her. In her being his inspiration and
Yes.
loving a man who just wanted to be free, he missed the pregnancy of her carrying his son.
Yes.
He missed his life. He was killed 2 weeks before he was born. And at the end of the day, like that is what white supremacy does to our leaders and how it destroys our black families. And
Yeah.
if we do not work to reclaim that, that is what is going to continue to happen. We have to stop that cycle.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like I just really appreciated them showing that very deep, very organic love. And so many of us fall in love and have those types of inspirations. And at the end of the day, like when you put your neck on the line, supremacy will keep you away from that.
Yeah.
And that's what's really sad about this whole situation. And
Yeah.
so I just really try to glean a lot of, you know, lessons for a
Yeah.
person who definitely engages in community education and understand exactly what I need to do and what I feel convicted to do.
Yeah.
That at the end of the day, like we have to learn how to protect our families more. And that was pretty much what he was saying. It
Yeah.
wasn't, they tried to make them look like they were anarchists. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it was literally about you're going to take me out. I need to try to protect myself. And
Yeah.
I have the right to do it. And you don't have the right to keep me from it.
Yeah. And you know what I think is beautiful even about this conversation, the organic nature of, and just by the way, because I don't, just so people know, like we didn't get together and plan this conversation out and had no outline. Like I like organic conversations because sometimes when I'm drinking on this podcast, I might get a little drunk, and everything is organic. Okay, but but the one thing that I liked about this is that we spent more time talking about the power, edifying blackness, right? And capturing and understanding and highlighting Chairman Fred, and no time really focused on what's his name, William O'Neill, which I think is important because
Yeah, we need to talk about him. We need to talk about him though.
all right. So let's let's pivot then to talk about O'Neill. Go ahead.
Judas. I mean, he is the if you're going to find an illusion to really
Okay.
show what he was. It was Judas. I mean,
Oh,
there's nothing else to say.
okay. Okay. No, let me ask this.
Okay.
Jesus forgave Judas, right?
Child.
He at least according to what I read in the scripture, he forgave him, right? He already knew what was going to
Because he had
happen.
a chance to, but see, we don't know if Fred Hampton had the opportunity to do that.
Do you?
And
But do
I
you
saw.
think? Do you think? Sorry. Do you think he has suspicions that something was odd about O'Neill?
I mean, I don't know. The people around him definitely did. But Fred was just in this zone where it's like I know I'm gonna be killed. Like I know I'm gonna be killed. Two, I believe in the people, and I would hate to, you know, blame a black man of this type of thing towards me. And it's not even about me. It's about the people. So if
Yeah.
they take me out, y'all should be able to keep it going anyway. So that was his mindset where it was not even that big of a deal, even if he was. But the people around him was like, nah, I don't trust him. No, I don't know. But let's talk about let's talk about him. In this book, The Assassination of Fred Hampton by his lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
they
Hold
really
on.
get very deep.
Put it up again.
Yes, yes. The assassination of Fred Hampton. How the FBI and the Chicago police murdered a Black Panther. This came out in 2009. And his mom, I'm gonna see if I can get a picture of her here. Um, this is his mom here with the actual lawyer. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Okay, there it is. That's his mom, and this is in 2009. His mom, his brother, and the lawyer. So they, they definitely supported this book. In this book, they really break down what William O'Neill was like, honey. He was Lakeith Stanfield did a great job portraying him, but baby, I'm sure that had to be a difficult thing to swallow as a rational human being because almost everybody like thought that this man was possibly schizophrenic and just had no understanding of what he was doing because they said that you saw in the movie that they said the man when he was getting ready to drug Chairman Frere, remember that? And they
Mm-hmm.
said, "Oh, hey, you want something to drink?" But remember, he couldn't even get it out because he was choked up, getting ready to cry. Remember that?
Yeah.
Man, look, that happened. Dude was very uncontrollable. He actually was the one. Bill O'Neill actually drove Deborah over to the house right before they for all that happened. So I mean, this dude was deeply into it, right? When it all came out that Fred Hampton was killed, they said that Bill O'Neill was so uncontrollable and told his family, "I would like to be a pallbearer." Right? They said he was broken up more than anybody in the actual BPP, and so they all felt like he was very close to him. In 1973, when they started to actually, prosecute these folks for what they did to Fred Hampton, like they said, this man was coming in with Italian suits, well, like tailored and all that other kind of stuff.
I mean,
So
you
they
saw him in the
knew.
movie when he was snapping at the waiter because they were black and he was eating
Yes,
some ribs and steaks.
this is what he wanted. Like even in the movie, Lakeith Stanfield. Remember when Mitchell, the white FBI guy who brought him on
Uh
and
huh.
dismissed his charges, whatever. Remember when he said, "Yeah, well, remember James Chaney was taken and they cut his penis off."
Yeah.
And did you see him laugh? He
Yeah.
snickered. Like that's how this man was perceived. That he was just this very, he tried to portray himself as this street dude, street smarts, all that, and that like he was that man that really gave an edge to the BPP because he knew how to make different like electronic devices. He knew how to do and deal with like surveillance equipment and all that other kind of stuff. So he tried to make himself seem like he was all of this, but he also played the FBI where he kept getting money from them,
He
honey.
did.
Kept.
He
And
kept
so he
saying, "You gonna
lived
give me
his
a
life,
raise? You gonna give me?" He got a
and that's
$200. He
real.
got a $300 bonus in real life
Yes,
for
but then
his work.
eventually he started getting more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
Like they was paying him so much money. And so at the end of the day, this was a scumbag. This was a man who had the audacity in his craziness to go on Eyes on the Prize and say, "Oh, I was a part of the revolution." That's what
He
I'm gonna tell
did
you.
say that. He said, "I was for the people
Baby, you
who."
gotta be halfway crazy.
Yeah, but you know what? I
I
really
didn't have I was tricked. I didn't know that they were gonna do all that. But you
but
drew a whole map of the house. What did you think they was gonna do?
but I really think he thought he was part of the revolution.
And killing a revolutionary. It's crazy. But that's why they think that they
But
knew that
he
he had
and
some type of mental issue. And do you know how he actually committed suicide? Have you seen that?
no, I didn't see that part. He didn't kill. He
They
didn't shoot him. What did he do?
Hell no. They said that he ran in the middle of traffic in Chicago, ran on the interstate, and killed himself in that way.
Oh no, I didn't know that. I
So we
presumed.
not talking about no real quick like Kurt Cobain type
Let me
stuff.
get out of
We
here. Yeah,
talking about a long death. Because if you run in the middle of a freeway,
yeah,
so they think that his it was like the lights was on and the people wasn't home type situation with his brain. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
he
yeah. Everything isn't there.
the dots wasn't
Be,
connecting.
because even when you look at his interview on Eyes on the Prize, he doesn't. He's there, but he's not there. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah, it
you
does.
see him physically, yes, his physical being is there, but it's almost like the inner his. I'm just going to use the word soul. Like I'm not a
Mhm.
median and anything like that, but it just seemed like it wasn't there. Like
Yeah.
he just yeah
No, I just think that in reflecting on this movie that we have to zoom out and really think about how the criminal justice system, you know, has to be revamped
yeah
and that we have to do a better job of ensuring that our black boys especially have people of representation that they can see that are tangible to them so that they don't have to go down those same types of paths.
yeah
And at the end of the day, we just had so many men throughout our history who, like you said, committing crimes is so they can eat, committing
yeah
crimes is so they can survive. Like at the end of the day, we are putting our folks in these situations where I have to do something that morally I may not agree with, but because of my circumstance, because of this capitalist society, this is what I have to choose to do to survive.
yeah
And so if we don't start having conversations about that, I think it's less about painting him as a villain and as somebody who is just callous and, just has these blocks against, why Fred Hampton did the things that he did.
yeah
Like, we have to really start to question, what are we doing in this society to make sure that black men can come through a nurturing environment to not have to make those choices.
yeah. No,
Because
I
what other
agree.
choice did he have? I don't want to go to jail for, 5 years. They're going to give me more time than they're going to give a white person doing the same thing.
Yeah,
Why do I want to put my life because I committed a crime to be able to try to make some money for myself or whatever?
yeah,
And then this is the decision that I'm given by the FBI.
yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day, at least he did try to run up the tab
yeah,
at the
yeah,
very least. But it's just sad that, what I'm saying, like we have a man who is been raised and nurtured and this is what he tried to do in his community juxtaposed a petty thief.
yeah,
And that's just what the reality was, and we have to talk about that reality so that we can do better.
yeah. No, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. And for those of you who have not seen the movie, but if you haven't seen the movie, you need to make sure that you check it out. It is currently on HBO Max until I think March
Mid
something.
March.
Yeah, right.
Yes,
And
March 12th or something like
then I
that.
don't know what they're doing after that, but it is out there. And if you have HBO Max, most of you, a lot of you probably have it, especially if you have AT&T Unlimited, Sprint Unlimited. I think they're giving it as part of those deals as well. Look at the movie; it's a great movie. You see at the very end that Chairman Fred, there were 99 shots. And what the evidence shows is that the Black Panthers, the individuals who were in the home, only did one shot, right?
Yep.
And
Yes.
all of the 99 shots were coming from the police officers. And
And
I
that
think
one BPP shot was just because he got shot in the heart
shot
and
exactly.
it was a response. Yeah.
And to hear, I do want to highlight this part to hear that he's already wounded. They come in and they being the cops come in and say basically, "Oh, I don't think he's going to make it anyhow." And then three more shots or
Yeah.
how many shots more just to ensure.
Yeah.
that he's deceased.
Yeah.
And it's just problematic. And when you see, and for those of you who saw 13th, you see them coming out basically smiling with him on a gurney coming out. And so it's just an unfortunate situation. So I want to take the time to really say thank you for participating. You are a master in what you do.
Thank
So
you.
it's important that you continue to do that. I put your information out there, but if you want to tell the people how they can find you on social media or get in contact with you, maybe someone wants to, maybe there's teachers listening, they want you to do some consultations. I don't know. Just tell the people.
Okay. So I'm pretty much at Keena in the city on every single social media platform. And I also for educators, especially those who are looking to transform literacy education in their school districts, you can reach me at thesavvyurbaneducator.com. And so, pretty
Come on,
much all of
Savvy.
I'm savvy, baby. But listen, my whole Black history collection and Black literature collection is on that website. I also, as a trained and licensed reading specialist, I definitely try to help parents determine different things. I test children for dyslexia and different, other things like that. And so just reach out to me if you are a parent of a child who has special needs, or if you have questions coming out of this pandemic and they've been out of school for so long and you need someone to test your child to see if they're still on grade level. Definitely reach out to me at thesavvyurbaneducator.com and I'll be happy to test your children for free. So but that's pretty much how you can get me at Keena in the city and at thesavvyurbaneducator.com.
All right. So you heard that. Make sure that you reach out to her, even if you just want to say, "Hey, how you doing?" Uh, for us here at Peeps Creek, you know that you can reach us always on our website. Our website is www.peepscreek.com. It's updated. I take pride in the fact that it's updated. So I put on there new updated website. I know there's people probably tired of saying that, but I'm going to put it on there until I'm done. You can get us on IG, Twitter, TikTok at Peeps Creek. You can get us on Facebook at Peeps Creek Cafe. You can even send us a message if you want, 202-618-0043. And then our email is cafe@peepscreek.com. And back to the website, make sure that you sign up for the newsletter. Oh, by the way, Keena, I signed you up anyway. Yeah.
We'll take it.
So I really appreciate it. Until next time, continue to drink, listen, and converse. Make sure you get your Black history. Oh, there's one thing that I wanted to show. This book right here, I don't know if you can see it. It is called Without Sanctuary. It is a great book for individuals who, some folks are just visual learners. You see a visual history depicted on here of hangings, lynching, and all of that. This is a great book. If anyone out there, you can go out there and get it. It is a great book. I really highly recommend it. I'm gonna buy that book that you show, Keena, because it's sad, but I don't know as much in-depth information about Chairman Fred as you do, and I want to continue to learn, improve myself, and understand the history from which I come. Look at that. There we go. So that is the episode. We appreciate you, and peace and love.